So then you're on your track, but you're going to need money. And I think this is where we all have to make a decision how it is that we're going to form our relationship with money. Because we can either use the financial system or we can distance ourselves from the financial system. And of course, these are two ends of the spectrum, and there's everything in between. So we have the two ends of the spectrum, using the financial system and distancing ourselves from the financial system. So from what we've talked about, what are your descriptions of the two ends, and then we can fill in the gaps.
Distancing is what I'm probably the most familiar with, because once my credit was just like almost a train wreck, for me, it was like the less I mess with the financial institutions, the better. Because they have now established themselves as evil in my mind. And so for me, it was like staying off the grid, finding ways to make money in ways that don't have to like tie into financial institutions was a big deal. Being able to cash my checks at a credit union or somewhere, at the very least, it's very minimal contact. There's kind of a lack of trust in the system to support. And so you essentially find ways to buy a car outright, pay it off immediately. Therefore, you have no interest, no loans, nothing that has anything to do with interacting with the bank anymore. If you can pay it cash, pay it all cash right there. And same thing with a house. If you can, have like a couple of payments and just knock it out right away, or if money has been saved and you could just outright just buy a house, many people will choose to do that. So the other side of the spectrum, the leveraging model, as I think I've heard you describe it before, which is where you essentially buy into it and leverage one kind of like debt and you kind of like toss it off, and it kind of creates like its own momentum with other things that could come crashing down if you don't pay attention. So there's a lot more risk involved, but there's a lot of momentum. They want you to use the system to keep things moving because they can continue moving their dust clouds in different ways too, which all seems to generate wealth and, create prosperity. But if certain mistakes are made, then all that can become a severe detriment.
So there's both sides of it. You have to have discipline. We've already talked about self-reliance as a kind of like a fundamental principle. And here we're going to talk about discipline, because regardless of what you do, when you deal with money, you have to be disciplined. Whether you want to distance yourself from the financial institutions or embrace them and use their money to create more wealth. On the discipline side, like you said, it's like something needs to be bought. Instead of buying the, 55-inch TV with 240 hertz LED that costs $2,500. You look at the picture on the 120 hertz 42-inch LCD, which is on sale for $450, and it's like, it's pretty good. Is it really $2,000 better for LED? Probably not. Oh, guess what? I have $300 in my pocket, so I could put down $300, finance the rest, and pay that off with my next paycheck, versus I have $300 and then $2,200 of debt. So basically, the distancing means you have to be aware of all of the purchases that you make and make sure that you're always spending as little as possible and paying everything off as quickly as possible. Anything else that's been financed. On the leveraging side, it's exactly the same concept for depreciable assets. So for goods that decline in value as soon as you buy them. That's kind of like a contradictory term, right? Depreciable asset. Isn't an asset a good thing? Yes, it is a good thing. If I buy a computer, then I can use that computer to do work, and therefore I can sell films to a client. However, it's a depreciable asset because as soon as I buy the computer, it drops in value. And if I wait a year and I want to sell it in a year, maybe I get half of what it's worth. So it's losing money. So even if you're using money within the financial system through leveraging, you always want to use the money to buy appreciable assets, assets that can increase in value. So those things traditionally are land and houses. They can be mutual funds or other stock portfolios, although right now that's thrown into question because the market's going like this. Or, and this is one thing that we're not really talking very much about anymore, but your own business. your business or yourself is an appreciable asset. So therefore, what would happen in the leveraging scenario is you would borrow money from the bank in order to buy one asset. So let's use houses because it's the easiest to understand with houses. So let's say I have saved $10,000 and I want to buy a house that's $100,000. So I need to borrow $90,000 from the bank. So I borrow the $90,000, but then over the next year, I work extremely hard. I work overtime. I save as much as I can, and I'm able to prepay my mortgage. And let's say I'm able to prepay $15,000 on that place. So now I only owe $75,000 and I have $25,000 worth of equity. By the way, Jafar is going to be putting the graphics on the screen, so right here. So now in my house I have I owe $75,000, but I have $25,000 worth of equity. So that I can use that equity in the house as collateral to go get another loan. And I could now put, let's say I want to take $20,000 out of the bank and I want to buy 2 more houses for $100,000 each, because I'll put $10,000 on this one and $10,000 on that one. The goal is that I want to rent those houses out. And again, within the spirit of service, in the spirit of hard work and discipline, I'm going to purchase those houses. I'm going to put in my own sweat equity to renovate them, to maybe change, the faucets or repaint the rooms so that they're nice, quality places to live for a nice family or a nice couple or a nice student to come live in. And then they rent from me. So then their rent can cover the mortgage payment. So basically at that point, I have my own home that I'm living in, and these 1 or maybe 2, if you're extremely risky, if you're up for the risk, 1 or 2 other rental properties that you're managing, and you're just bringing people into those properties to live in those properties so that they are now paying your mortgage. So as you're paying down the mortgage on those 2 properties, all of that equity that's being accumulated in those properties it's growing your wealth, your net worth. Then let's say your kids need to go to college. What you can do is you can borrow against your house and therefore get a much more favorable interest rate on your loan in order to pay for your kids to go to school. Mm-hmm. So you have these assets, these appreciable assets. Now the reason that it is risky is because, let's say, all of a sudden there's a scandal at UNC, for example, and there are fewer students that decide that they want to come to the university, and therefore you're not able to rent out that house and get the tenants that you thought you were going to be able to get. All of a sudden, now you're the one paying your own house plus these other places. So very quickly, this dream of, oh, other people are paying my mortgage for me, can become the nightmare of, oh no, I've got 3 mortgages I have to pay. So those are the 2 options, and I think through the comment section, it'd be interesting to hear different people who have experienced one or the other and get their comments.
Which are not visible to the eye, but which are rapid enough to be sensed by the ear.